Welcome to Peak TV. I'm Niv Dagan, Executive Director of Peak Asset Management, and we've got John Pilcher, CEO and Managing Director of Neuren, joining us today. John, thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks, Niv. It's great to be here.
John, Neuren, for those that don't know much about the company, it would be great to get your thoughts in terms of what you do.
Sure. So Neuren is developing 2 drugs to treat 6 different serious neurological disorders, emerge in early childhood. They have a terribly debilitating range of symptoms, massive burden on both the patients and their families, a lifelong burden. There's no products approved for any of them, so huge unmet need, and so that's what Neuren's trying to do something about. And we're very close to the end with the first one. So our lead program is treating a condition called Rett syndrome, very serious condition, and we're actually in a phase 3 trial in the US at the moment, which is being conducted by our partner, Acadia Pharmaceuticals in the US, and funded by them. And that's approaching top-line results in the 4th quarter of this year, so really exciting milestone for us, obviously. And then we have a lot of upside from 5 different programs in phase 2 following on hard behind that.
Very, very interesting. And John, just on the P3, because that's really interesting, leading into Q4, which is the ultimate results. We're seeing a little bit of movement in the stock, which is excellent following the AGM presentation. Can you tell us a little bit more about the P3 trial for Rett syndrome?
Yeah, sure. So I mentioned Acadia Pharmaceuticals, our US partner. So they are executing and funding the entire trial. And it's fairly straightforward, to be honest. They've just got to repeat what we did in phase 2. So we ran a phase 2 trial where we had 2 efficacy endpoints that showed that the drug was statistically significantly better than placebo. And that's what Acadia's got to do in the phase 3 trial. So they're not trying to do something that hasn't been done before. It's a relatively small trial, 180 girls. They either take drug or placebo for 12 weeks. And the difference from the baseline to 12 weeks is the primary efficacy endpoint. They can then continue on and take the drug for another 9 months to get 12 months of safety data, which is what the FDA require. But it's that 12-week trial is really the key, and that's the thing that's reading out in the 4th quarter of this year. So I mean, I can't wait for that time to come. We were really excited about it. So.
Yeah. And John, you've obviously learned a lot from phase 2 leading into phase 3. I mean, whether it is variables or dosage. So tell us a little bit more why you think there is a much, much greater chances of success.
Yeah, so I mean, I always say there's no slam dunk in a clinical trial. We all know that, but we really do feel this has been given the best chance it could have, and it's probably for 4 reasons. And the first one I've already said. Acadia is trying to just repeat what we did in phase 2. So it's endpoints that have already been positive. They're not trying to show something different on a different endpoint. And then there are 3 aspects which I think give them a better chance than we had in phase 2. The first one is the length of the trial. So I mentioned it was 12 weeks of treatment. So in our phase 2 trial, we treated for 6 weeks, so half the time. And what we found, if you look at the results, and they've been published, they're on our slides, that the difference between drug and placebo was still growing at the end of 6 weeks. So it was very clear to us that if we had treated for longer in that phase 2 trial, we would have got a better result than we got. Now, Acadia doesn't have to get a better result, but they are treating for twice as long. So, we have every expectation that the result should be better. The second thing they've got in their favor is just statistics. So the sample size, as I mentioned, there's 180 girls, 90 in each group. That's more than 3 times the number that we had in the phase 2 trial. And the statistics mean that, if you get the same result with 3 times the sample size, you're going to get lower p-values. And if not, then you've still got a better chance of getting below 0.05, which is your target for the stats. And then the third thing important to understand is that often in phase 3 trials, people introduce more risk. And I don't know whether people really understand this, that when they're chasing large numbers of patients, they're often going to new countries. They might be opening sites in Eastern Europe or Asia, perhaps different languages. And that introduces extra risk that wasn't there in phase 2. Now, Acadia haven't done that. The phase 3 trial is entirely in the US. Most of the sites are sites that took part in our phase 2 trial. It's doctors that are, experts in Rett syndrome. They know the girls. They know these efficacy measures. And so there really hasn't been extra risk introduced into phase 3 at this stage. So all of that makes us, really does make us think this is the best chance they could have. And as I said, we can't wait to get to the 4th quarter.
And John, before I ask the addressable market and the size, has COVID impacted anything at all over there in the US?
Yeah, I mean, so the trial did start just before COVID hit, and it did have an impact on enrolment. So Acadia actually stopped enrolment for 3 months when it first hit. And there's no doubt that it's made things more difficult in the early part of the trial. So, you know, even when they reopen enrolment, as you can imagine in the US, there's these hospitals in different states, different cities, all had different rules. So patients having to travel. So there's no doubt there were challenges there, but Acadia, you know, have done a great job in meeting those challenges and working out ways to get around them. And in the last 6 months, they've opened a lot of extra sites, still in North America, still with, you know, centers of excellence, but extra sites to make sure they stayed on the timeline. So to be honest, you know, they're very close to finishing enrollment now. And I think when they do it, it'll be a fantastic achievement by them and very importantly, the Rett syndrome community. You know, in that environment, to finish the trial on time will be a fantastic achievement.
Yeah, that's fantastic to hear that they have actually opened a lot more sites and things are opening in the US, and we're very, very close to coming to completion. So on that note, the addressable market, I mean, for the first time that I've seen, and I've been personally a big supporter, as you know, for a long time, but talk us through the addressable market and how big it is, because I think on conversations that we've had, it was at $150,000 on average dollars on average spend per patient. So I would love to hear your thoughts and how big the market is.
Sure. So there's a few different elements to this. So the first one, you mentioned the price. So let's just talk about the business model here. So all of our programs are orphan drug programs, and so you know, you get orphan drug status in the US, Europe, Japan, and a few other places. And the whole business model is relatively low volume, high price. So, you know, you get a higher price than normal drugs. You're targeting a leadership position in these markets with either no or very little competition. And you get a more favorable regulatory environment too, because, you know, the FDA is as keen as we are to get an effective treatment for these terribly debilitating conditions. So you get a better chance of success. And I think my personal view is you've got a better chance here of getting hundreds of millions of dollars of sales than you have trying to steal market share from people in big markets. I actually think this is a better model. So that's the first element. So you're right, the orphan, if you look historically, orphan drug, you know, a sort of average sort of price might be $150,000 for a year's treatment. There are some that are priced much higher than that, but I think, you know, that's a reasonable expectation. So then let's talk about the numbers of patients. So whilst these are technically rare diseases, they're not ultra rare. So there are tens of thousands of patients in all of these 6 disorders we're going after. So let's just focus on Rett as an example. And there are 3 different elements. You know, there's the US, there's Europe, and Asia. And I want to mention those second 2 because an important part of the Acadia deal was that we licensed them North America only, US, Canada, Mexico. Neuren has retained rights to the rest of the world, and we get free and full access to all the data that Acadia creates in the US to use in those other territories to get approval. So, you know, we're going to get payments from Acadia for the US, so milestone payments and royalties, but we also get this valuable asset of being able to use the data elsewhere. So therefore, the numbers of patients in all of these places are important. So Rett syndrome in the US, we reckon there are about 10,000 girls and women with Rett syndrome in the US. A little bit more than that in Europe, and probably about 3 times that in Asia. So it's interesting. You know, Asia is a real interesting opportunity for us, and something that we're looking at quite separately to you know, working with Acadia here, and we think that's a big commercial opportunity that we're trying to chase down. But if we just focus on the US for a moment, which is Acadia's territory. So they recently presented in the Jefferies Healthcare Conference, and Steve Davis, the CEO, was asked about the commercial opportunity for Rett syndrome. And when they did the deal with us, the day they announced it, they said that their expectations for peak sales in Rett syndrome alone were more than $500 million per annum. And in this conference about 10 days ago, Steve Davis reiterated, he said basically nothing has changed in our view since then. So $500 million of annual sales in Rett. So if you think about it, at that sort of price, you know, maybe you've got to treat 2,500, perhaps 5,000 girls. And out of those 10,000, 5,000 are known today. So RettSyndrome.org, the advocacy group, has a register with about 5,000 names on it. We have worked hand in hand with them from the very start of this program. They've been a huge part of the program. So the business model here is, you're not chasing these patients with big sales forces. You are having great relationships with the advocacy groups and with the key physicians who drive opinion. And there you have 5,000 names on a register waiting, provided they have the ability to pay. So,
and there's no one doing what you're doing in the world in terms of this advanced?
So if you look at our portfolio as a whole, we have the biggest, most advanced portfolio in neurodevelopmental disorders. So these disorders that impact kids. There are a few companies working in maybe 2 of them. There's no one working across all 6, and there's no one as advanced as us. So as I said, it doesn't mean there's no competition at all, but really a business model here is get to market, lead the market, and get those sort of high sales. So.
Yeah, and it's just quite amazing with a market cap, I think, or enterprise value of about 160 million with what you've got and what you've developed and how advanced you actually are with a global partner is just quite amazing. So that brings me to the last question, John. I mean, you're not just a one-trick pony. You've got other opportunities within the portfolio. Do you want to elaborate a little bit what you're also excited about?
Yeah, I'd love to, because I really am excited about the second product we have, which is called NNZ-2591. And I've been saying for a long time that the upside here is far more than trofinetide, the lead drug in Rett syndrome. And that's, you can look at it from a pure numbers point of view. We're going after 4 conditions in parallel with 2591. The numbers of patients involved are about 6 times the number with Rett syndrome. So we've just talked about the sales potential in Rett syndrome. Then, there's 6 times that with 2591. It's also, I think, going to be have a better margin as a product. The manufacturing is, we're in a far better position with that than we were with trofinetide. So you're going to have a more profitable product, 6 times the numbers. And also, we've spent the last 2 years, meticulously building the platform for this product from scratch. And I think as we approach phase 2 trials in 3 disorders that we're about to start, including one in Australia in Angelman syndrome, we've got the best, data package you could have leading into that. We've got fantastic preclinical results. We've got excellent manufacturing position. We really couldn't be going into that, with more confidence. So, I have high hopes for this, and I think it's important from a corporate point of view. So, we don't have all our eggs in one basket here. We've got multiple shots on goal across 2 different drugs, and they're all late stage. They're all in phase 2 or later. And, 2591, we haven't capped the upside. So the Acadia deal is extremely important to us, and, it's been critical in getting Rett syndrome to where it is, and the fact that they funded it all. But in a way, you could argue we've capped the upside because the terms of the deal cap the upside, whereas we've got global rights to 2591. We're going to get phase 2 data next year, and then I think there could be some really interesting corporate options for us. I think the US rights to that second drug are the jewel in the crown for us from a value point of view.
Well, John, fantastic to have you and good to see you, and keep pushing. Exciting few months ahead for the company, and as you know, big supporters, and thanks very much for joining us here at Peak TV.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Nev. Appreciate it.